Landon died 3 different times and went to heaven. That was 90 minutes in heaven. Was that your first death experience at that point?
I believe the first one was at the scene.
At the scene.
And then on the chopper, and then at the hospital.
They rushed him to the neurotrauma intensive care unit, and that's when he died his 3rd time.
Landon Whitley's story is truly unbelievable. He came back from the edge of death with a message from Jesus that will send chills down your spine. Every time he was thought to be gone, he returned with a warning. He's not the only one. Other children and a young man also claim to have seen Jesus during their near-death experiences. What did they witness, and why did they have to go through this to understand it? Let us explore the strange messages that Landon Whitley received that not could, but will change everything in your life. The day Landon's life changed forever. Landon Whitley was only 8 years old when his life changed dramatically. It was an ordinary Sunday in 1997, and he was riding home with his parents, Julie and Andy, after church services. They were in their Pontiac when suddenly their normal day took a tragic turn. An ambulance crashed into their car right where Landon's dad, Andy, was sitting, and Andy died instantly. Emergency teams quickly helped Julie out of the wrecked car. At first, they didn't even realize Landon was in the car because the damage was so severe. He was concealed behind his father, and it took rescuers a while to locate him. They noticed his shoe first and then found him. When they pulled him out, he wasn't breathing, but they acted swiftly to get him breathing again. This was just the start of a very tough period for Landon. He was revived and immediately flown to the hospital by helicopter. Landon was in a dire state, and that day he stopped breathing 2 additional times. Each time, the medical team managed to revive him. The doctors were concerned, however. They warned his mother, Julie, that even if Landon made it through, he might have serious brain damage that would make him need care similar to that of a small child. Julie was devastated but clung to hope for her son's recovery. During this incredibly challenging time, Julie also had to cope with the death of her husband. She felt abandoned and couldn't comprehend why such a horrible event had occurred to them. She was heartbroken and questioned why they hadn't been shielded from such a catastrophe. Even in her anger and confusion, Julie never ceased praying. She continually asked for her son's survival, maintaining her faith as strongly as she could. Landon had sustained severe head injuries in the crash and was in a coma for 2 weeks. Throughout this time, he was connected to numerous machines that kept him alive, while his mother, Julie, stayed by his side, praying for him to awaken. The doctors weren't optimistic, but Julie maintained her prayers without waver. Miraculously, Landon woke up with no brain damage, which surprised everyone. However, Julie faced the difficult task of telling him that his dad had died. When she asked Landon if he knew where his dad was, Landon mentioned that he had seen him in heaven. He also spoke of seeing 2 other children there, which was a shock to Julie because she had never mentioned her 2 miscarriages to him. Landon's recovery is considered nothing short of miraculous. He clearly remembers the crash, the coma, and his heavenly visions where he saw his father and other family members who had passed away earlier. Julie is eternally grateful that her son survived and recovered, attributing their overcoming of these dark times to their unwavering faith and continuous prayers. Landon even recalled seeing 2 siblings in heaven whom he recognized despite never being told about them by Julie. Each time Landon returned to life, he claimed to have visited heaven, receiving messages and visions. On his 3rd trip, he met Jesus, who gave him a daunting message and a significant mission. Jesus instructed him to return to earth, lead a righteous life as a Christian, and spread the word of his existence. Landon felt that he had only seen parts of a larger story and knew he had an important role to fulfill. Years later, in 2019, Landon and his mother began sharing their profound experiences with others facing loss through a program called Grief Share. They shared their story to help others, and Julie believes that while her husband may not have been saved that day, they were still part of a larger plan and were cared for in some way. They encouraged others to not dwell in grief or anger, but to keep believing and hoping for better days. As Landon grew to understand his remarkable experiences, another young person was about to encounter something similar. Landon wants everyone to know that Jesus is real, that heaven exists, and that angels are true. He encourages people to follow the teachings of Jesus in the Bible, hoping they realize that life can get better. His unique experiences have given him a special outlook on life, which he is eager to share. He is living proof of God's love and mercy, and he inspires others to maintain their faith. As Landon's story brings hope, another young person is about to face a life-changing experience, finding strength after a life-altering event. Julie documented their challenging yet uplifting travel in a book titled Faith Has Its Reasons, emphasizing how their difficult experiences brought them and others closer to God. Watching Landon talk about Jesus and the heavenly visions is a profound blessing for her. Despite the severe physical impacts of the accident, which included having numerous metal plates in his head, a reconstructed nose, and reduced vision in one eye, Landon leads a fairly normal life. Dedicated to his mission, he is passionate about spreading Jesus' message, confident in his beliefs, and determined to show others that the spiritual realities he speaks of are genuine. Landon is an inspiration, showing how strong faith can bring immense strength and hope. Another young individual, Zach Clements, a high school football player, experienced a life-altering event similar to Landon's. During a physical education class, Zach suddenly collapsed, his heart stopping for 20 minutes, which led to a diagnosis of sudden cardiac arrest. He was urgently flown to a children's hospital, and just when the medical team was about to declare him dead, they detected a pulse. Zach woke up several days later, recovering in what many would describe as a miraculous manner. He openly discussed his experience of dying, seeing Jesus, and then being revived. His vivid memories, resilience, humor, and determination to share his story and spread the word of God significantly aided his recovery. Like Landon and Zach, a young girl named Mia had a life-altering moment too. Back in October 2012, Melissa Harris and her husband, Mike, decided to spend some time with nature and took their children on a hike in Wayne National Forest in Ohio. On their last day there, something dreadful happened. Mike was carrying Mia along a trail when suddenly a huge tree branch fell from above, hitting Mia directly on her head. Melissa heard Mike's alarmed scream, and when she held Mia, she felt a terrifying emptiness. Mia seemed lifeless. That moment of horrifying silence was broken by Mia's scream, a sound that was frightful, yet a clear sign that she was still alive. The crisis escalated quickly. Mike scrambled to get cell service to call for emergency help, while Melissa, in a state of shock, held on to Mia, fearing the worst. As she touched Mia's head, she could feel the serious damage and braced herself for the possibility of losing her daughter. Recalling a biblical account where a woman was healed simply by touching Jesus' robe, Melissa drew strength from her faith. Convinced that the same divine power that healed that woman could save Mia, Melissa prayed fervently, laying her hands on Mia and seeking a miracle. The scene was fraught with panic and desperation. Melissa was in tears, praying and clutching Mia tightly, pleading for her daughter's life. The vivid memory of holding Mia's seemingly lifeless body and then hearing her startling scream was something Melissa knew would never leave her. She couldn't believe such a catastrophe was unfolding before them. Despite feeling completely powerless and filled with despair, Melissa's faith stood firm. She remembered another scripture where a woman's faith led to her healing, which reinforced Melissa's hope that divine intervention could also heal Mia. While Landon's story was bringing hope to many, here in Ohio, Melissa's family was grappling with their own profound challenge of faith. Finally, the emergency responders arrived. They rushed Mia to a nearby hospital where it was confirmed she had a traumatic brain injury, along with a fractured skull and internal bleeding in her brain. Mike drove after the ambulance, stopping to call their church, urging everyone to pray for Mia. The prayer request quickly spread through their church community, reaching people both locally and internationally, who all prayed for Mia. She was placed in a medically induced coma and transferred to Nationwide Children's Hospital. That night, Mike and Melissa were left wondering if Mia would wake up the next morning. Just as hope seems lost, a frightening moment in the woods tests another family's faith in a powerful way. Mia's miracle, a story of recovery. Miraculously, when Mia was brought out of her coma, she immediately showed signs of awareness. Her first words were about needing a diaper change, which was a huge relief for Mike, signaling that Mia was not just awake but potentially all right. Initially, Mia showed paralysis on her left side, but she overcame these difficulties within a mere 3 days. She then underwent surgery to repair her skull and the tear in the membrane around her brain. Remarkably, Mia fully recovered, regaining all her cognitive abilities and her lively personality as if the accident had never happened. A few months after the accident, Mia shared with her dad a dream where Jesus had taken her home. This dream convinced Mike and Melissa beyond doubt that a higher power had played a role in their daughter's miraculous recovery. They felt incredibly thankful for the chance to continue raising Mia, firmly believing that their prayers had been powerfully answered. Mia's complete recovery was a testament to the power of faith and prayer, leaving her parents profoundly grateful for the miracle they had witnessed. Adding another layer to these stories, Bobby Sosa's experience offers a distinct perspective. Starting his career as a police officer in New Jersey at 19, Bobby was exposed to some of life's harsher realities early on. He shared his path on YouTube, explaining how he initially resented God after the death of his grandmother, who had raised him. After leaving the police force to start a career in finance at 28, Bobby met his future wife, a devout Christian, who gradually influenced his outlook on life. Despite his initial reluctance and lingering bitterness over losing his grandparents, Bobby's views slowly changed. Over time, he embraced the faith that he once dismissed, finding a new sense of peace and purpose. On the night of March 23, 2020, Bobby Sosa's life took a dramatic turn. He went to sleep feeling fine, but woke up in the middle of the night gasping for air, his chest feeling like it was being crushed. Using his quick thinking from his police training, Bobby curled up into a tight ball to ease his breathing. What he didn't know was that his wife, seeing his struggle, had already dialed 911. Before long, his house was filled with paramedics and police officers. One officer in particular played a crucial role that night. Even though Bobby felt too weak and frightened to stand, the officer gently encouraged him, helping him to his feet. Bobby's wife later recounted how, once he stood up, it seemed like he was lifted by an unseen force, after which he felt like he was floating in a dark, empty void, unable to see or hear anything. Even though it seemed he was in another realm, Bobby was still able to talk to his wife, telling her he was very tired and apologizing for everything that was happening. Shortly thereafter, his eyes rolled back and he passed out again. The paramedics rushed him into an ambulance, where his heart stopped beating for over 40 minutes before they could revive him and rush him to the hospital, where he was initially declared clinically dead. During this critical time, his wife, a former EMT, was only allowed to see him for 5 minutes every hour due to strict hospital protocols. After Mia's remarkable recovery, the notion of divine intervention continued, this time involving a former police officer in New Jersey who underwent an extraordinary experience. Things were looking really rough, and at one point the doctors warned Bobby Sosa's wife that he might not make it. But right then, their spiritual advisor encouraged her not to lose hope. He suggested she should go into Bobby's room and pour her heart out in prayer. Taking this advice seriously, she prayed intensely, and it seemed like their fortunes began to change. Amazingly, a space became available in the intensive care unit, and Bobby was quickly transferred there, though his wife didn't even have a chance to say goodbye. While this was happening, Bobby was having an experience that was worlds apart. He felt as though he was floating in an empty space, disconnected from everything. Then suddenly, a figure he recognized as Jesus showed up right next to him. Jesus approached and embraced him in a comforting manner, similar to a close dance at a wedding. This moment deeply moved Bobby, and he started apologizing, overwhelmed by the encounter. After one miracle, another begins to happen, leading Bobby to an experience that will change his beliefs completely. A policeman's brush with death. At the same time during this extraordinary event, Bobby saw another familiar face, his old buddy Mark, who had been a police officer and had passed away. They had a heartfelt chat, reassuring each other that Bobby would look after Mark's wife, fulfilling a promise he had made before Mark's death. Their conversation was warm and focused on the good times they had shared, not on their bizarre current surroundings. When Bobby woke up in the ICU 9 days later, he was completely disoriented. He couldn't recall any part of his near-death experience. The ICU was loud and bustling, which frightened him a lot. No one was explaining what was happening, which made him feel even more unprotected. The first person he talked to was a staffer in protective clothing who knew his name but wouldn't answer his questions. Feeling on edge and frightened, Bobby became very cautious. He thought he might have caught COVID-19, as he had seen some news about it on TV, although later tests showed he hadn't. His mind was filled with suspicion, thinking the hospital staff might be plotting against him or worse. He refused to eat or sleep, worried that he might be poisoned. This continued until one night a nurse came in, accompanied by a man in lime green scrubs. This man approached Bobby with a gentleness that stood out. Initially defensive, Bobby relaxed when the man introduced himself as a prayer warrior sent by Bobby's wife. This eased Bobby's fears significantly, and he started to accept the help being offered. 2 weeks after, Bobby had improved enough to understand everything that had happened. He shared the entire ordeal with his wife, who was shocked. She tried to track down this kind Kendrick, but there was no record of him at the hospital. Only later did she realize that her intense prayers might have been answered very directly, with Kendrick possibly being a celestial answer to her pleas for Bobby to meet Jesus. Bobby Sosa's brush with death was a profound event that opened his eyes in ways he never imagined possible. He came away from that experience with a clear, unshakable conviction. The presence of God is not just a belief, it's a reality, and it's most palpable in our darkest hours. Driven by this newfound understanding, Bobby decided to share his insights with others. He recorded a video where he spoke about his experiences in a book written by a neurologist who had gone through a similar ordeal. This neurologist, too, had encountered Jesus during a near-death experience, which resonated deeply with Bobby. This particular book, when combined with Bobby's own brushes with death, fortified his faith significantly. He discussed how during crucial, life-threatening moments, he felt a divine presence that actively intervened. He explained that what many fear as the end of life is not an end at all, but a mere transition to a different, more peaceful existence. This transition, according to Bobby, strips away all the negative emotions we carry, be it anxiety, doubt, fear, pain, or suffering, and replaces them with an overwhelming sense of peace and an indescribably deep love. Bobby described feeling this immense love very vividly. When he crossed over during his near-death experience, he felt enveloped in a love so powerful and pure that it was beyond words. This experience transformed his perception of life and death completely. He returned to life with a new perspective, a heart full of peace and an absence of fear concerning death. A few weeks after coming back from what seemed like the precipice of life itself, Bobby had a heartfelt conversation with his wife. He confided in her that the fear of dying had completely left him. The love and peace he had experienced were so pure and beautiful that he no longer felt any trepidation about what comes next. He explained to her that understanding what lies beyond our current life helps dissolve the fear of the unknown. This insight wasn't just comforting to Bobby. It provided a beacon of hope that he felt compelled to share with others. Is Landon Whitley's message from Jesus a genuine glimpse into the afterlife? Or could it be something our minds create in moments of crisis? What if these experiences are part of something much bigger, something we don't fully understand? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.